Hello class. So in this video, we are going to discuss chapter 3 or to be specific, no, chapter 3 and ma-discuss na rin natin pati yung 4 and 5 which is rate of change tsaka slope. But mainly what we'll be focusing on is yung topic nga natin na derivatives. So from our previous meetings and previous video discussions, we have discussed the following already. We have limits, tangent line, and the rate of change. And from the discussion that we did in these topics, we have established something, and that is our definition of limit. So na-establish natin that our definition of limit is this one. So if you have a function f of x, and it is approaching or converging to a value, let's say for example a, then the limit of the function with respect to with x as x approaches a rather is given by this notation, which is the limit of x as the limit of f of x minus f of a over x minus a as x approaches a. So this is our definition of the limit. Now, if we will try to make some adjustments in this definition, so make specific specific conditions. Like let's say for example, yung x ay palitan natin, ito na pala, yung x ay palitan natin ng a plus h, and then take the limit as it approaches 0 instead of a. If that will be the case, we will arrive at this equation or that this form. That is the limit of f of a plus h, kasi yung x pinalitan natin a plus h, minus f of a over h na lang, because originally this is x minus a, di ba? So if we add or if we change x ng a plus h, makancel yung a, ang matitira is h na lang. So that's why we arrive at this one. Again, the limit of f of a plus h minus f of a over h as h approaches 0. So ito yung makukuha natin na limit, no? Now, this is a very special kind of limit because this is occurring in many different situations. So kumbaga, this kind of limit can model many real-world phenomena. No? And papangalanan natin siya. So ang tawag natin dito, oops, what's this? Ayan, pasensya na. So ang tawag natin dito is derivative. Ayan, so this is what we call a derivative. So if we are going to take the limit of f of a plus h minus f of a over h as h approaches 0, that is what we know as the derivative. So now, ay alam naman natin kung paano kumuha ng limit. So meaning, if we have a certain function, we can get its derivative. Now, let us formally define what a derivative is. So the derivative of f of x with respect to x is the function, ang tawag natin dito is f prime of x. Itong apostrophe na to, we read it as prime, Ibig sabihin nun, you are, that is the first derivative of your function. So, and it is defined as follows. So, f prime of x is equal to the limit of f of x plus h minus f of x over h as h approaches 0. Now, take note, ang ginawa natin is we didn't define this as just a number. Actually, we defined it as f prime of x. So meaning this is still a function because we are acknowledging that this function or the derivative of a function can also be a function of x. In this case, pinapangalanan natin siya na f prime of x. So that is how we read it. Now, para mas maintindihan natin siya, kasi ang hirap kung puro numbers lang, puro definition, puro words, let's try to apply it in a problem. So, ang sabi dito is, find the derivative daw of the following function using the definition of the derivative. So, what are we going to do here? So, simple lang. Kung paano lang yung ginagawa natin sa pag-take ng limits. Diba? Alam naman natin kung paano mag-take ng limits. Whenever we compute for the limit, what we do is, we substitute it to our limit equation. So, we will do that also. We substitute this to the derivative equation. And then afterwards, we try to manipulate our equation para pag in-apply na natin yung limit natin, hindi tayo magkakaroon ng 0. No? Or magkakaroon tayo ng maayos na sagot. Kasi iniwasan nga natin yung division by 0, etc. So, yun din yung gagawin natin dito. So, itong example natin, f of x is equal to 2x squared minus 16x plus 35. Again, this is our equation or definition for the derivative. That is, f prime of x is equal to the limit f of x plus h minus f of x over h as h approaches 0. So what are we going to do here? So first, we need to find f of x plus h. So using, substitution lang, or nag-evaluate tayo ng function, but instead of a number, we'll be evaluating f of x at papalitan natin siya ng x plus h. So first, we try to find f of x plus h. So f of x plus h, this is equal to, magiging, yung lahat ng x, papalitan natin ng x plus h. So that is 2x plus h squared minus 16 times x plus h plus 35. So yung f of x natin, given naman, ito rin yan. So we can now substitute to our definition. So if we do that, we will have, ito yun, this is your f of h, f of x of h, ito siya, and this is your f of x. This is your f of x plus h, and this is your f of x. So over h, sinubstitute lang natin siya dito. So this time around, ang gagawin na natin is, sisimplify na natin siya. Now, kasi di ba ang usually ginagawa natin, pati sa pagkuha ng limit, is hindi pa natin isa-substitute agad yung value ng h natin. Because your function is approaching up, your h is approaching 0. What we do is we substitute 0 dito. However, at once, hindi natin siya pwedeng gawin. Because kung isa-substitute natin siya dito, ano yung mapapansin? Magkakaroon tayo ng division by 0. So what we can do is try to simplify the equation first. Try nating i-apply yung algebra natin para mawala yung division natin by 0. So to do that, mag-multiply lang tayo. We can simplify this one. Ito, napakadali or napaka-obvious. We should simplify this one. So we have 2 times x plus h squared. So simplify lang natin to. This is x squared plus 2h x plus h squared, no? So times 2, so we will arrive at 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared. Next is we have negative 16 times x plus h, so negative 16x minus 16h plus 35. Tapos ito, i-distribute lang natin yung negative sign, so that's negative 2x squared plus 16x minus 35 all over h. Now if we simplify this one, we can remove ito, 2x squared, maka-cancel with negative 2x squared. We also have negative 16x and positive 16x. We also have 35 and negative 35. So we will have, matitira na lang is 4xh plus 2h squared minus 16h all over h. So this is now our equation. Now, what we can do now is, meron pa rin tayong h sa ilalim, di ba? So, paano natin siya matatanggal? Pwede nating i-factor out yung h. So, if we do that, tinanggal natin yung h dito, tsaka dito, we will have h times 4x plus 2h minus 16. So, cancel na tong h na to. So, ang matitira na lang is, we have 4x plus 2h minus 16. Now, kapag sinubstitute natin yung h dito, wala tayong magiging problema because wala na tayong division by 0. So, kung ganun yung case, let's just do that. We can now substitute our h and we will arrive at 4x minus 16. So, magiging 0 to. So, therefore, our derivative or f prime of x is equal to 4x minus 16. That is our final answer. No, that's our derivative. So, in derivative, that's just the limit also, but given, ito yung ating ayos. So, the limit of f of x plus h minus f of x over h as it approaches 0. So, but then, limit din siya. So, familiar lang. Kung paano tayo nag-take ng limit last time, very similar lang. Let's have another example para mas maging malinaw sa atin. So, next, we have find out the derivative of the following function using the definition of the derivative. So, at this point, you can pause the video and try to answer. Then, you can check kung tama yung makukuha nating sagot kanina. Again, as you can see, all of the things that we are doing, the only part that's calculus is the definition. But the rest, it's all algebra. So kung medyo nahihirapan or nanghuli, then I guess we should review our algebra as well. So let's proceed with answering this question. So again, our function is g of t is equal to t over t plus 1. So kailangan lang natin siyang isubstitute sa equation natin ng derivative. So our definition rather of derivative. So to do that, we have g of t g prime of t rather is equal to the limit of g of t plus h minus g of t over h as h approaches 0. So again, gawin lang natin yung ginawa natin kanina. We first need to get g of t plus h. So yung g of t plus h natin, that is equal to lahat ng t, papalitan natin ng t plus h. So that will be t plus h over t plus h plus 1. So that's our g of t plus h. And then we have our g of t. So we can now substitute. So if we do that, ginawa natin, since may denominator to, medyo magugulo kasi kung denominator over denominator tayo. So nilabas natin, ginawa natin 1 over h. Itong h na to, nilabas natin para lang hindi nakakalito. So we have 1 over h times, this is your g of t plus h. That's t plus h over t plus h plus 1. Ito yung nakuha natin kanina. Minus g of t natin, that's t over t plus 1. So, para magkaroon tayo ng operation dyan, ang gawin natin is similar denominator natin sila. So, to do that, let's multiply both, let's multiply the whole equation by t plus h plus 1 over t plus 1. No? Para lang magkaroon tayo ng same denominator and mapag-multiply natin sila. So, magiging t plus h plus 1 times t and then t plus 1 times t plus h. So, basic algebra lang. So, we will arrive at this equation. We have the limit of 1 over h times t plus h times t plus 1 minus t times t plus h plus 1 over t plus h plus 1 over t plus 1. So, again, if we substitute h directly, hindi tayo sure na kung makakuha tayo agad ng sagot. So, we should simplify this also. Kasi ganun pa rin, no? Magkakaroon pa rin tayo dito ng 1 over h. And 1 over h is division by 0. So, kailangan pa rin nating tanggalin yan. So, let's simplify the equation. So, ginawa natin, ito, minultiply natin to. Itong t plus h times t plus 1. So, kapag nag-FOIL method tayo dito, that's t squared plus t plus th plus h. Minus, itong t, distribute lang natin dito. So, that's minus t squared plus th plus t. So, over the denominator, it's t plus h plus 1 over t plus 1. Now, kung mapapansin, dito pa lang sa taas, this is t squared, this is minus t squared. We have th plus th, and then kapag dinistribute natin itong negative na sign na to, this is negative th. This is t, positive t, and then if we distribute this negative sign, that's negative t. So, makakancel din siya. So, ang matitira na lang sa equation natin will be 1 over h times h over t plus h plus 1 times t plus 1. So, na-simplify na natin yan. And with this one, we can already cancel h dito, saka yung h sa taas. So, therefore, we now have 1 over t plus h plus 1 times t plus 1. Now, pwede natin gawin is, i-substitute na natin directly yung h natin. So, when h is equal to 0, or as h approaches 0, this will become 0. So, we will arrive at 1 over t plus 1 times t plus 1 times t plus 1. So, that's t plus 1 squared. So, therefore, that's 1 over t plus 1 squared. That is our g prime of t. And that is the derivative of our function. So, that's our final answer. Yeah, next example, we have find out the derivative of the following function using the definition of the derivative. So, we have r of z is equal to the square root of 5z minus 8. So again, at this point, you can pause the video and try to answer on your own and then check the answers later. Okay, let's begin answering this one. So our r of z is equal to square root of 5z minus 8. So applying the definition of limit, we need to get r of z plus h, and that is equal to the square root of 5. Lahat ng z, papalitan natin ng z plus h minus 8. And then r of z is given, so we can now substitute. So substituting that, we have the limit of the square root of 5 times z plus h minus 8, ito yon, minus 5z minus 8, ito yon, all over h. So again, if you substitute h agad-agad, hindi tayo makakuha ng maayos na answer because this is division by 0. So we try to manipulate this problem. So to do that, what we can do is to simplify, no? Kumbaga, Kasi ang aim natin dito, kung napapansin nyo, what we're trying to do is we try to cancel h sa ilalim. No? Kasi if it is a product or if h is a factor or multiplier to your denominator, then obviously what will happen is it will become 0. Your denominator will become 0 no matter what. So ang gusto nating mangyari is mawala siya. So in order for us to do that, yun, we apply certain techniques in algebra. So such as this one. So what we're going to do is we multiply it to its conjugate. Because if we do this, di ba, this is, if this is, let's say for example, the first term is A and this term is B. So this is A, this is B. If you multiply A plus B and A minus B, we will arrive at A squared minus B squared. Di ba? So that is a concept in algebra that we're going to use para makuha natin or manipulate natin yung equation, mabawasan siya. So we multiply it to its conjugate. So if you do that, ito, madali na to. Because what will happen here is magiging square lang yung A and magiging square lang yung B. Tapos naka-minus sila. And then ito, multiply lang natin siya sa H. So if you do that, we will arrive at this equation. So mawawala na tong square natin na to. Ang matitira is we have 5z plus 5h minus 8 minus, ito na yon 5z minus 8. Over, that's h times the conjugate, which is the square root of 5 times z plus h minus 8 plus square root of 5z minus 8. Now, tingnan natin yung numerator, marami tayong makakancel. So, makakancel natin yung 5z because this is 5z. Pag dinistribute natin yung negative, this is negative 5z. And yung negative 8, pag dinistribute natin yung negative, this is positive. So, cancel na rin siya with positive 8. So, matitira na lang sa taas is 5h over h times the square root of 5 times z plus h minus 8 plus square root of 5z minus 8. We can now cancel this h. So, ang mangyari niyan, wala na tayong division by 0 because wala na tayong multiplier ng h. So, when h approaches 0, hindi na tayo magkakaroon ng undefined answer. So, proceeding with that, we can now substitute h with 0. So, if we do that, this will become 0. So, matitira na lang is 5 over square root of 5z minus 8 plus 5z minus 8. A square root of 5z minus 8. So, this is the same. So, we can just write na 5 over 2 square root of 5z minus 8. So, that is now the derivative of our function. So, r prime z natin is equal to 5 over 2 square root of 5z minus 8. That is our final answer. Ayan. So, if you want to practice, yun, I'll be giving exercises para ma-improve yung understanding natin and magkaroon tayo ng muscle memory when it comes to solving the derivatives. But then again, I would like to say as early as now, mahaba yung process, di ba? So, ganun din, when taking the limit, mahaba yung process. So, pati sa pag-take ng derivative. But I will not give much emphasis on this topic. Why? Because later on, we'll be studying formulas and shortcuts on how we arrive in derivatives without having to go through this process. So, kung natatamlayan kayo o nawawalan kayo ng pag-asa kasi ang haba ng solution, kapag nagpunta na tayo sa next chapters, puro shortcuts na tayo. So, may mga formulas na tayo na gagamitin. Yeah. Now, we also have some theorems, no? Or some things that we need to take note when talking about derivatives. So, if a function, f of x is called, it can be called differentiable daw at x is equal to a if f prime of a exists and f of x is called differentiable on an interval if the derivative exists for each point in that interval. So, kung napansin, this is similar to our definition of limit. So, what we're trying to point out here is that when the limit doesn't exist, then the derivative doesn't exist either. So, that's just one thing that we need to remember. Also, ito sinabi rin kasi dito, if f of x is differentiable at x of a, then f of x is continuous at x is equal to a. And based from our definition of limits and continuity, this is also the same, or this actually tells us the same thing. That if the limit doesn't exist, then the derivative doesn't exist either. Kasi alam natin na kapag continuous ang isang function at a certain point, the limit exists at that point. So if the If it is not continuous at that point, then the limit does not exist. Then also, the derivative doesn't exist. So that is what we're trying to, that is what these statements are trying to say. Yan. Now, for the derivative, we also have a lot of other notation. No? How do we express derivatives? So, we also express derivatives in these ways. So, ang kaninang pinakita natin is that the first derivative is f of 1 of x. Di ba? But this can also be expressed in these manners. Like, let's say, for example, alam naman natin, in functions, the f of x, we usually express it as y. Di ba? Yung f of x, na-express natin as y. So if you take the derivative of f of x, let's say that's f of prime of x, can also be noted or written as y prime. So ito yon. Now, we also read this in this manner. Let's say for example, you have f prime of x. We can also say that it is d of f or over dx. df over dx. Ang basa naman natin dito is the derivative of f with respect to x. So, because ito ay yung ginagamit natin to define the derivative na ginawa natin or the differentiation process that we did. So, that is the derivative of f with respect to x. And since yung f of x ginagawa rin nating y, so pwede rin siya na dy over dx. That's the derivative of y with respect to dx. And we also have, pwede natin siya express as ganito, the derivative over dx. This acts like an operator, kumbaga, for this function. So, d over dx of this function, or d of a derivative of f of x over dx. And since yung x nga ay tinatawag din natin na y, so pwede rin siya na d over dx y of y. Now, kapag compute tayo ng derivative, syempre gagamitin natin yan. I mean, ano namang sense, di ba? Kung hindi natin gagamitin yung derivative natin. Like, for example, nung kinuha natin yung slope of a tangent line in the previous video, pati yung sa rate of change, in-apply natin yung value ng x after finding the derivative. So, in those cases, another notation na ginagawa natin is this one. No? Nilalagay natin is this straight bar, and then x is equal to a. So, sabihin nito, after finding the derivative, you will evaluate the function by substituting a to your derivative. No? So, ibig sabihin, papalitan natin yung lahat ng x, papalitan natin ng a. So, that's y prime, tapos evaluate natin siya at x is equal to a. So, pwede rin natin siyang express. We have many ways to express the function. So, pwedeng df over dx, tapos x is equal to a, or dy over dx, x is equal to a. So, ano lang ibig sabihin nito? Ang ibig sabihin lang nito, class, is papalitan natin lahat ng x ng a. We will evaluate your derivative using this value. Ayan. Now, alam na natin yung definition ng derivative. Now, let's try to understand ano ba yung applications niya or where we can apply it. Now, again, for this problem, I'll be giving two problems kasi dito in order for us to understand or interpret the derivative. Again, hindi pa kailangan na makabisa. No, this is just an example and para lang mapakita ko sa inyo kung ano yung gamit niya. No, and ma-appreciate natin siya. But no need na kailangan is sobrang naintindihan na natin siya because pag-aaralan pa natin ulit to in the next few chapters. But I want to be consistent na mapakita sa inyo na ay ito pala yung function niya. So, remember, we have talked about the tangent line, no, in our introduction nung pinag-usapan natin yung limits. No, because sa paghanap pala nung tangent line natin, we can use the concept of limits, no, wherein the slope ng ating tangent line ay pwede nating makuha using the concept of limits. Now, how do we get it? Using the concept of derivatives naman. So, in this example daw, find the tangent line to the following function at z is equal to 3. Wherein r of z natin is equal to 5z minus square root of 5z minus 8. Now, kung napansin, ito rin yung problem natin kanina. So, there's no need for us to solve for the derivative. What we need to do na lang now is to substitute, is to get the slope given that we have this condition that at z is equal to 3 natin. So again, itong RZ is equal to 5z minus, square root of 5z minus 8, nakuha na natin yan kanina. So, hindi na natin isosolve ulit. But kung hindi pa natin yan makukuha, ang una natin gagawin is to find r prime of z. So, that's the first step. But since nakuha na natin siya kanina in the previous example, lalagpasan na natin siya. And instead, we will use the answer that we got earlier. So we have r of z is equal to square root of 5z minus 8. From the previous equation, our previous problem, nakuha na natin yung kanyang r prime of z. And that is 5 over 2 square root of 5z minus 8. So nakuha na natin siya kanina. Now remember, in our definition or discussion about the tangent line, this is our equation for the slope. Diba? So this is our equation for the slope. So now, what do we do now? So what we need to do is ito. So we need is the function value and the derivative for the slope. So remember kasi na if you want to take the equation of the tangent line, diba, we need to make an equation of a line. So the equation of the tangent line, it's the line that goes through one of your points, which is at z is equal to 3. So that's at a and f of a, where in this case, your a is equal to z, so you need to get f of 3. And it is given by y is equal to f of a plus mx minus a. So this is your definition of a tangent line na diniscuss natin during the video in continuity and limits. So ibig sabihin class, what we need to do now is just find this one. Kailangan makuha natin yung f of a na to, and then makuha natin yung m, which is your slope. Because x, we already have a value of your z, and that's a. So to do that, substitute na lang natin. Clear ko lang. Ayan. So una natin kailangan gawin is hanapin natin yung f of a. No, because you know that one point in the line is a, f of a. And in this case, your f of a is r of 3 because your a is equal to 3. So if you substitute that to this equation, that's 5 times 3, that's 15. 15 minus 8, that's square root of 15 minus 8, that's square root of 7. No, so that is your r of 3. So which is this one. So ibig sabihin, sure tayo that your tangent line goes to this point, 3 square root of 7. But based from our equation of the tangent line, that's y is equal to f of a plus m x minus a. So we already have f of minus a. Ito na lang hanapin natin. So but what we need to find is this one, m. Diba? We need to find m, and m is your slope. Now remember that the first derivative or the limit of the tangent line, this is actually your slope already. This is your equation of the slope, no? As we have discussed in the first video or in the video on continuity and limits. So therefore, we can just substitute free to your r prime of z. So ito na yung sinasabi ko. We will evaluate r prime of 3, which is this one, as 3, as z is equal to 3 or approaches 3. So ito nga yung class yung gagawin natin. So we're just gonna substitute 3 dito and we'll get the value of r prime of 3. Now doing so, we will have 5 over 2 times 5 times 3, that's 15 minus 7. That's also square root of 7. So we will arrive at a slope that is 5 over 2, that's square root of 7 times square root of 7. So that means that the slope at z is equal to 3 is 5.2 square root of 7. 5 over 2 square root of 7. Now remember, sir, bakit po ba yung slope niya is nag-iiba-iba? Diba, naalala natin that the curve, what we're going to have here is a curve. Yung equation na to, itong r of z is equal to square root of 5z minus 8, hindi yan straight line. Ang mafo-form natin dyan is, let's say for example, a curve line. And ang curve line natin is as you go to each point, nag-iiba-iba yung kanyang slope. Yung ang point na to, your slope is different. Yung slope mo at this point is also different. Your slope at this point is also different. Now, ang tinatanong kasi sa atin is what is the slope at z is equal to 3? So that is why kailangan kunin muna natin yung derivative natin and then find the slope at that point. Because at that point, pwede na, kapag iba na yung value ng z mo, iba na yung slope mo. So, nakuha. So, therefore, yun nga. Now, di ba alam natin that the point at which a line is tangent to a certain curve, pareha sila ng slope. Diba? So, therefore, if this is your tangent line and this is your z is equal to 3, then therefore, at this point, pareha sila ng slope. So, that's why this is the slope of your tangent line. Now, applying that to our equation or equation of our tangent line, so that is y is equal to f of a plus m times x minus a. So, we will arrive at, ito na yung f of a natin, that's r of 3, plus ang m natin is r prime of 3, which nakuha natin, times z minus 3. So, we will have y is equal to square root of 7 plus 5 over 2 square root of 7 times z minus 3. So, now, this is our equation of the tangent line. So, nakita, aside from using the limit or the way na ginawa natin last time by trying to use the limit and then ang ginawa natin is we substitute values approaching approaching z or our variable rather hanggang makita natin saan siya magko-converge. So, another way is, or an easier way rather, is just by finding the derivative. Next, we have another problem. This is a rate of change problem naman. So, suppose that the amount of water daw in a holding tank at t minutes, so nasobrahan ng t, so t lang yan, t minutes, is given by v of t is equal to 2t squared minus 16t plus 35. So, determine daw each of the following. Is the volume of the water at the tank, in the tank, increasing or decreasing at t is equal to 1 minute? B. Is the volume of water in the tank increasing or decreasing at t is equal to 5 minutes? Is the volume of the water in the tank changing faster at t is equal to 1 or t is equal to 5 minutes? Is the volume of the water in the tank ever not changing? If so, when? Okay, so remember this kind of problem, na-discuss din natin siya when we had an introduction sa continuity and limits. No, because again, this kind of problem is pwede nating ma-solve using the concept of limits. Now, let's try to understand, or now that we are encountering this again, let's try to understand it on a deeper level. So, ang sabi daw dito is, the volume daw ng tangke natin, nag-change siya sa kada segundo. No? Given t is per minute, or minuto, yung tinutukoy natin na t, yung volume ng iyong tangke, nagbabago-bago yung laman niya. No? And yung daw equation ng pagbabago-bago ng laman ng tangke mo is described using this equation. That's 2t squared minus 16t plus 35. So meaning, kada change ng time mo, nagbabago yung volume mo. Now remember what we did in this question or in this type of problem is we use the average rate of change. Average rate of change. At every certain point, diba, at every time t, your instantaneous change in the volume also changes. Kada segundo or kada minuto, nag-iiba yung rate at which pumapasok yung tubig. But what we can do is describe that change as an average. Meaning, kunin mo yung average of how all of this, considering yung time is how much yung average na pagbabago niya ng pagbabago ng laman ng tangke natin. And how did we arrive at the equation of our ARC? Diba? O ginawa lang natin yung katulad nung last time. And nag-arrive tayo at an equation similar to our definition of limit. Diba? So that's why nagkaroon tayo ng ARC. So your ARC pala is also your limit. And we can describe it therefore using derivatives. So yun yung gagawin natin ngayon. Instead of, di ba last time in our problem, sinubstitute natin yung definition ng limit. This time around, we'll be substituting the definition of derivatives. Now, before proceeding to this question, medyo madali na to. Again, kasi given to is v of t is equal to 2t squared minus 16t plus 35. If you notice, this is also the same problem that we had earlier. Except that, yan, pakita natin, except that, ito ba yun? Ayan. So, except that, ang ating variable is not x, no, but it's t. But this is the same problem. So meaning, we can use the derivative na nito. Hindi na natin kailangan isolve siya ulit, yung derivative, because we already know the derivative. No, again, kaya lang naman kasi natin pinapakita tong problem na to para lang ma-appreciate nyo na ay may gamit pala siya. No? So ito yung equation natin kanina, papalitan lang natin siya ng t. So that's f of t is equal to 2t squared minus 16t plus 35. And we already know the derivative. And yung derivative niya is nakuha natin kanina, that's v prime of t is equal to 4t minus 16. Or pwede rin siya natin i-describe as ganito, derivative of v, the volume, with respect to time is equal to 4t minus 16. So usually, mas na-appreciate natin yung ganito kapag ganitong problem because obvious na it's a rate. Diba? Because rates are units per time. Diba? And with this representation or notation, parang mas obvious sa atin, mas kilala natin na, yes, this is a unit or this is rate. Now, in this case, this is your average rate of change. Now, sagutin natin isa-isa yung question. So, letter A is the volume of the water in the tank increasing or decreasing at t is equal to 1 minute. So, what we should do now is just take the instantaneous rate of change at which t is equal to 1 minute. And how do we get that? We substitute that to our equation, to our instantaneous. So, let me correct pala, no? This is your, if you substitute, this is your average, 40 minus 16. But if you substitute a value of t, then that is your rate of change at that certain point. So, let's say, for example, 40 minus 16. That is your average rate of change. If you want to know the rate of change, let's say, for example, in this case, at the first minute natin, then if you substitute that, that will be 40 minus 16. We will arrive at this one. That's negative 12. This is now, therefore, your instantaneous rate of change at 1 minute. Meaning, at exactly 1 minute, when the system started, yung rate of change mo is negative 12. Meaning, nagbabago yung laman ng tangke mo at this value. Your volume decreases or increases at this value, negative 12 units per minute. So, yun yung ibig sabihin natin dito. Now, we already had the answer. So, that is V prime of 1 natin is equal to negative 12. Now, ang tanong is this increasing or decreasing? Now, makikita natin is this is negative. So, what we can conclude is that, kasi diba, in rate of change, meaning positive or negative, in algebra or in applications, it signifies vectors or direction. So, meaning, if this is negative 12, nagde-decrease yung laman ng tangke natin at the first minute. Gano'n siya kabilis mag-decrease? 12 units per minute. Hindi natin alam kung ano yung unit kasi walang binigay na unit ng volume. So, let's say for example, liters. So, meaning at the first minute mark, at that certain point, kung saan isang minuto na yung nakalipas, nagde-decrease yung laman ng tangke mo ng 12 liters per minute. So, ganun yung ibig sabihin nito. So, we can also express this sa ganitong notation. We have dV over dt, this one, evaluated at t is equal to 1. So, that's negative 12. Pwede rin natin siyang express as ganyan. Next, we have letter B. So, is the volume of the water daw in the tank increasing or decreasing at t is equal to 5 minutes? So, ganun lang din yung gagawin natin. Using the formula of the average rate of change, we substitute t. And when we get that, ayun na, makukuha na natin yung instantaneous natin. So we have v prime of 5, because that is 5 minutes, is equal to 4. So ibig sabihin nito, we have a positive number 4. At this point, after 5 minutes or at the 5-minute mark, ang nangyayari naman dun sa system natin is nadadagdagan siya ng 4 units of volume per minute. So, that is why 4 yung sagot natin dito. Next, letter C. Is the volume of the water in the tank changing faster at t is equal to 1 or at t is equal to 5 minutes? Well, obviously, yung water natin sa tank is changing faster at t is equal to 1. Because at t is equal to 1, you are changing 12 units per minute. However, nung t at 5, it's just 4 units per minute. So, alin yung mas mabilis magbago? Ito. No? At t is equal to 1, mas mabilis magbago yung ating laman ng tangke or volume ng tangke dun sa tubig natin o volume ng water sa tangke natin. Now also, hindi ko pala nabanggit, is it increasing or decreasing for letter B? Since positive siya, it is increasing. So, ibig sabihin, for that time, every minute, nadadagdagan siya ng 4 units of volume. Next, last, is the volume of the water in the tank ever not changing? If so, when? So, remember na we have this formula of the instantaneous rate of change natin. That is the first derivative or the derivative of our equation. That is, yun nga, the rate nung the first derivative ng v of t natin. So that's v prime of t. Now, ang tanong dito is the volume of the water in the tank ever not changing. So meron daw bang punto at which there is no change in the water in the tank. So meaning your rate at which the water increases or decreases in the tank is 0. So yun yung tinatanong. And ang tanong, if so, when is that going to happen? No? When is that going to happen? At what time will that happen at which your v prime of t is equal to 0? Okay, so ang dami ko nang binigay na clue kung paano siya sasagutan. So what we have to do here is just make our v prime of t is equal to 0. So that's v prime of t is equal to 0 or dv over dt natin is equal to 0. And then find the value of t. Because at this point, ibig sabihin kasi nito at v prime of t is equal to 0, meaning at that point, walang change. At that instant, no, hindi nag-change yung volume ng water doon sa tangke natin. So yun ngayon yung hanapin natin. Anong time mangyayari yun? O dahil substitute lang natin to our derivative. So we have 4t minus 16 is equal to 0. So, makakancel yung 4. So, lipat yung 16 sa kabila. Then, divide the whole equation by 4. That is at t is equal to 4 minutes. So, ibig sabihin nito, at t is equal to 4 minutes, at that specific time, hindi nag-increase or hindi nagde-decrease yung volume ng tank mo. But that doesn't mean, class, na steady na siya doon. Hindi steady na ganun. Kasi syempre, when time increases or decreases, or when the t changes, nag-iiba na rin yung rate of change mo. Kaya nga 'di ba, instantaneous yung ginagamit natin or instantaneous rate of change yung hinahanap natin because it also changes with regards to time. Kaya nga na-explain natin siya or dinedefine natin siya using derivatives because we can use derivatives to define these instantaneous parameters. So, ganun yung ginagawa natin. Ang gusto lang natin point out with this example is that at exactly t ay 4 minutes, during that time, hindi nag-change. No? At that very instant, the rate of change or instantaneous rate of change at which water is being filled or removed from your tank is equal to 0. Walang change at that point. Pero kapag lumagpas ka na sa 4 minutes or bago yung 4 minutes, there is a rate of change. Nagbabago-bago siya. So that is how we define lang or how we can associate derivatives with these problems. So again, if hindi pa masyadong nagigets, that's okay. No? Because what we want to emphasize here is how it is used. And nakikita natin, kahit paano, di ba, this is a problem na recording, lagi nating binabanggit, rate of change sa tangent. So at least, napafamiliarize tayo para sa point na lagi na natin itong gagawin, mas maintindihan na natin siya. So inuunti-unti rin natin yung pag-intindi sa mga applications nila. Ayan. So that is it for our discussion. So yun lang. So this already covers rate of change, tangent line, and the derivatives.